going on, everybody? What is happening? What's going on, everybody? My name is Ian Robinson. I am the lead ZBrush trainer here at Maxon, and we make learning ZBrush and all that good stuff. Lots of fun, lots of excitement. And what are you looking at, you might ask? Well, you are looking at the ZBrush Summit 2023. It's been announced for a little bit. There's more information to come soon, we promise, so just hold back, don't wait. But in the meantime, you can register for free. It will be in person, so if you're in the area, you could definitely do it. So make sure to go to thezbrushsummit.com and do all that fun stuff. I'm going to be announcing it for like, oh yeah, there you go. I'm going to be announcing it a ton during my streams. So, and if you're new to what the ZBrush Summit is, you're not going to want to miss this one because we're celebrating our 10th anniversary. So I'm going to be the voice of like, go preach it, go do it, go sign up. Because we're going to have a lot more information coming on that soon. So, yes. What is going on, Casey? Let's see here. Rishabh, how you doing? Irene, what's going on, Chase? What's happening, Gus? How's it going? How's everyone doing? Hopefully I didn't butcher anybody's name. All right, so we got ZBrush open over here. We got the ZBrush open over here. And so what we talked about last week, if you guys remember, is I put up a little voting poll. Got some music going now. I put up a voting poll of what character to sculpt based on the overall being sent over. And you guys chose Nightcrawler. So that's what we're going to be sculpting. It's going to be project-based. So, of course, it's important to gather reference. So we're going to be doing a bunch of fun stuff. I really love this character, so I'm excited to be doing it because kind of breaks some anatomy rules, but also too, you kind of need to know your anatomy to get in there. So this will be a lot of fun, kind of pushing the limits. And I haven't really done superhero characters. I've sculpted a Spider-Man once a while ago, like Spider-Gwen and like Gwenom, but to me that doesn't really count because I've never really like gone into like a superhero sculpt. Personally, it's just something I never really had an interest in doing, but lately been inspired. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that. And I am loving this pose, by the way. This is a solid pose. So I'm digging this. So much 3D. Hey, what is going on? We are working on Nightcrawler. So that's going to be fun. What's up, Nap? What's up, Johnny? How you doing? It looks like an exit at a month. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So, but we had a vote over on IG, and if you don't know what my Instagram is, you can go ahead and you can always follow me over there. Name is in the chat. So, yes. That's what we're going to be doing. So, I like doing voting like this. It'll be a lot of fun. So, of course, we gathered reference. So, we need some pose reference. We definitely need to figure out some poses, get some anatomy in there, which is going to be good. I'm going to start this one from a base mesh. But there are some elements that I personally want to lean in onto, and because of the way squatting is and the way your legs move, that's going to be different. But more importantly, the most inspiration pose we're going to be going for, maybe, is this freaking squirrel. I love it. What a superhero. What an awesome character. So let's get into it. Let's go ahead and go through. And of course, too, I teach ZBrush here at Maxon, so if you guys have questions, feel free to pop in there and just ask away. So ZBrush ships with a base mesh, so we're going to click the male base mesh. It always tells you who the model is from. And so we're going to start with this, but we're going to do a lot of manipulation, so it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and grab our handy dandy pen. Let's grab our artist glove. Where do I have my artist glove? I guess we're going to be rocking it without an artist glove today. That's okay. Let's get into it. I'm going to turn perspective off just because I typically in the toy world, I work in orthographic. There's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, but I tend to choose to go that route. So I'm going to turn that off for now. If I was doing a likeness, I would say stay in perspective and try to match your reference. But here, I'm not too worried about that. And also too, this is subdivided and I actually want to go into DynaMesh for this. And so we're going to take a look at some of this fun jazz. So actually, let me back up here. And let's actually delete lower instead, get some of this here. And then what I'm going to do to kind of help myself out here is I'm going to actually grab the masking brush. I'm going to go mask lasso. And I'm going to select these hands. And I'm going to make new polygroups by hitting Control or Command W. And let's actually clean that up just a little bit. and then we'll do that. And the reason why we're going to be doing that is because we're going to want to separate the things that we actually want to have some more information or more detail on a separate. So like, for example, the head, I'm going to have the head be a little bit different. And then we're also going to go to the feet. And I'm going to do it right above the actual ankle joints. Look at something like that. There we go. And the reason why we're going to do that, our big tip of the day, if you don't know, and this is something that I love to do, is that with DynaMesh, you have this little thing called groups. And what's neat about this is that if you have polygroups, you turn this on and you pick a resolution that kind of matches by coming in and actually using the picker and maybe kicking it up just a bit. When I hit this, it's going to separate out my mesh. So for those of you who don't use this feature, but you want to move into DynaMesh, this is a great way to now isolate and close off those polygroups. And then we can separate all of this through. So I can actually come through and then say split this head off. It's actually split hidden. There we go. Grab the body. And then I can split all of this stuff. Split, grab the hands. So we just quickly isolated all that good stuff. What's up? What's up? What's up? Yeah, the concept's going to be fun, right? I'm really excited about it. And so we need to get some key elements with this. So I preach, name your subtools. Name these because it is super important. Of course, the first subtool always is the naming factor. So I'm going to duplicate that head, and then I'm going to turn around and call this head. And then let's actually get the feetsies. Feets, ease, don't ask. And we'll call this feet. Perfect. And now let's go ahead and do a save as. Let's come down here. We got Nightcrawler live stream. Go Nightcrawler. Blockout. _ 001. Bam. How did I move the mask after making it? Crazy Alexander, that's a great question, and I'll show you right now. So how I moved the mask was, okay, real quick too, just an announcement. I used to have a keyboard on my stream that would help you see my hotkeys. I call them out too, but unfortunately that plugin broke, so I'm trying to figure out how to fix it. So yeah, great question. Basically what you need to do is when you go ahead and press and hold Control, and you start making the mask, you can let go, and you can see here I'm using the mask lasso. So you can let go of Control and press the keyboard, the spacebar in the keyboard, and now holding that spacebar allows me to move this mask wherever I see fit, and then I can mask that section off. The same thing goes if you're trying to make a selection. So if I would like to select, and it doesn't matter what selection brush you choose, if I want to use the select rec, I just press Control and Shift, start to make the selection. I let go. Notice there's no hand on the keyboard, just on the pen. And then I press and hold that space bar, and then I can move that around. So this is a great way to get those selections custom to what you want. So if you know you need to mask off this area, but you're not sure where on the deltoid you actually want to make that mask, you start making your mask, let go, come through, and then just kind of press and hold that space bar, and maybe navigate that around, and then finish off your mask selection. So those are great ways to go do it. An excellent question. We can't do live translation at the same time. Unfortunately, it is an English stream, but that is stuff that I personally were looking into at some point for after the fact. But during the live streams, it's hard to have an actual live translation. Sorry, I do apologize. But please feel free, if you need to ask a question and you choose to ask a question in your native language, totally fine. I have Google Translate, and while it's my best friend when it comes to figuring out other languages, please feel free to ask it, and then I will go ahead and read the question through Google Translate, and then try to respond appropriately. So, okay. Now that we got that, we got this going on here. We need to change his body type a little bit, because right here we can see that he is a bulky character, but he's also very lean. So he's not bulky. I lied to you. He's very shredded. He's very lean, but he's very athletic. So his muscles aren't super heavy. They're more like he's more of a fitness type model. I also have some fun poses over here, so we can start referencing, some different types of superhero stuff. So we're going to focus on maybe toning him down and then building up his muscle structure a little bit more. So with something like this, let's actually come in here to his head real fast. What I like to do is just kind of get rid of anything but the major plane changes. I'll put in some eyes, cavities right here. And I will up the resolution of this guy. So I'm going to go to Geometry, DynaMesh. Again, I'm going to pick the resolution, but I'm going to increase this just a tiny bit. Turn off groups now, turn off blur, and then I'll reestablish that DynaMesh, just giving me a little bit more high res. And same thing with his hands. Now here's a cool thing with his hands. So check this out. So we're going to I'm actually going to subdivide this up, delete lower, get a new resolution, and then I'm going to re-DynaMesh that. And now we're just going to isolate. Now he's like this all the time, actually. He's very, he has just basically two main fingers and then a thumb. So the way I'm going to do this, actually, so I'm going to come through here, I'm going to mask off this finger, and then I'm going to go ahead, Control W, maybe get a different color by Control Z and picking, and the same thing here, come through, grab this, Control W. Now what I'm going to do, okay, is I'm actually going to go ahead, turn groups back on, re-DynaMesh this. I'm going to go ahead and select this guy, and we're going to try to merge these fingers together. So now we're going to kind of making up a little bit of anatomy here. I'm going to try to line that up just a little bit. And the same thing with the gizmo turned out, just Control Shift tap, and I can actually go ahead and get something like this in there. And actually I'm going to hold Control and blow this up a little bit. This finger is going to be a little bit more interesting. In fact, actually, let's grab this. Let's do this one, Control W, re-DynaMesh that. Mask this one off. Bring this back here, something more like this. Grab this guy. And I'm actually going to scale this one up. So I'm going to turn on local symmetry. And I'm going to blow this up. Something a little bit more like this. We're going to start placing this in here. So what we're looking for is just something that's close enough to that shape. And then maybe what we'll do, because his anatomy is a little bit unique, I'm going to soften this area out, and I'm actually going to push this a little bit closer. Maybe bend this in like this just a little bit. There we go. And same thing, let's do this. Let's grab there. How do DynaMesh toes properly? Actually, great question, and that's what we're currently doing right now with the fingers, and we'll do it with the toes as well. We'll get to that spot. Let's see here. If I have a ZSphere structure, like a tree, for example, do I need to move it or scale it? I try this in preview mode by pressing A, and then, but when I move back to ZSphere, nothing changes. Okay, Irene, great question. So your question's about ZSpheres. So let me go ahead and actually, real fast, finish this hand up merger, and then I'll answer that question. That's a great question. And in short, verbally, the answer to your question is simple. Simply put, like when you're looking at a preview, no major changes will happen. You have to commit to those changes in order for it to take official effect. But I'll show you what I mean. Okay. So I'm going to come through. I'm just getting this close enough, intersected enough. Now I'm going to make it all one poly group, or I could just turn off groups, and I'm going to rebuild that. And so now I'm going to start kind of blending that together. Now that's smooth as a little much. So what I'm going to do is take a little bit of, back it up, grab clay brush. I'm going to grab a new alpha 18. That's one of my favorite because it's not super harsh, but it gives me some nice forms. And I'm going to reestablish some new knuckles. Now we're not going for detail here. What we are going for is just a light cleanup. But I'm still respecting the hand anatomy, so I'm going to put a little bit of the hand fat pads right in here. Probably up the resolution a little bit. Grab like the damn standard, maybe make some indicators of where some of these bend folds would be. So maybe something like this. And then, yeah, come in here and just kind of blend this together. Now we're going to make some more adjustments, but since his character only has a couple of fingers, we got to but he has normal human hand size, maybe a little bit bigger. We got to make sure that we actually kind of respect some of the anatomy here. So we'll come through, we'll make some changes that tend to maybe make a little bit of sense, but we're not going to dwell too much on actual details. We're just going to get a sense. Now here I'm starting to this is starting to get thinned out a bit, so we can change that by going up to brush. We can go up to our auto masking and turn on backface mask, which will help not push material back in space. Okay. That's starting to look pretty cool. It gives us an idea of what that is. Maybe we'll go a little bit bigger with his hands just because he's a superhero. We'll do a little bit of an inflate, and then we'll make some more adjustments, and then we'll get to the toes. Okay, so hello. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so to go to your tree example, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. I'm just going to go ahead and put this guy off over here. Beautiful. Now let's go here to Simple Brush. Actually, let's stamp them one more time. There we go. So we're going to go to Simple Brush. We're going to switch out, and we're going to grab our ZSphere. We're going to drag out a ZSphere, hit T for edit mode, and now we have this guy right here. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to make some ZSpheres. So if you don't know ZSpheres, just a really quick recap while we answer the question, is that the QWER is going to be your best friend because you're able to press W to move your said ZSphere, E to scale it, and R to rotate. Okay, but also too, what we're going to do is Q is going to allow us to draw. So in this case, I'm going to draw out a ZSphere. I can press and hold Shift to snap it to the same size. Hit W, and then the size of my brush just allows me to kind of do something like this. Scale this down. And I can make a really quick, I can quickly just make a fun design. I can even hit Q and tap a couple spaces and maybe get like a new type of ZSphere that I can manipulate. So if I get something like this, and we're just going to quickly draw something out that we think might be kind of cool. So I'm going to do this like that. W, we're going to grab this out. Q, we're just going to grab and touch that. So we're going to make a really quick and dirty tree here. Grab this over here. Maybe cause that one. Boom. There we go. Maybe something like this. Let's go a little three-dimensional. There, let's grab this guy. Maybe rotate that back there. So just something that's really quick. So you're getting your design, scale it down. And then do one more. Grab this up, scale this down. Perfect. Okay, so we have something like this. So this is our quote tree, right? So when you hit A on the actual, oh, I need to make Polymesh 3D. Okay, sorry. When we come up here to adaptive size and we hit preview, which you usually hit with A, what you're doing is you're just visualizing a preview. So if you start like sculpting on this, you start making changes to this, right? Which you can do. You can come through here, but as soon as you kick out a preview, it's going to ask you if you actually would like to keep these changes and make this a model which you're working on, or what's going to happen is it's just going to snap back to its original result. So the same thing here is that by hitting A or preview, which for some reason my hotkey changed, so let's do that. So when I hit preview and come back and forth, and let's actually drop this down a little bit. So yeah, so when I come through here and I'm starting to make changes to the actual mesh, the changes have not been 100% applied or baked because it's just a preview. Same thing with like, if you take a look at like dynamic subdivision, it's a preview of actually 3 levels of subdivision, but it's not actually subdivided. So it's just giving you a visual representation of what that would look like. So what I would say is if you wanted to come through and actually make this thing bigger, either A, just overall, just go through and just, you know, make the whole thing relatively bigger. But the easiest way would be to, when you're done with preview, just make adaptive skin when you're done with your model. Doesn't matter how big or small it is, and then you could go through and make those changes. But again, it's just a preview. But when you make adaptive skin, you'll get a new mesh down here. So your ZSphere is never truly gone away. It just creates a new space for you to work in. So now you have this new canvas in which you can come through, scale this up, maybe come around, make a cleaner, you know, make some big changes. You come through, you can start pivoting this around, twist it, etc. Whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. But if you're like, now I want another tree, or I don't like this tree, just go back to your ZSphere, which is just over here in your tool palette, and just click that, and then you can come through and continue editing this ZSphere. Or you can have multiple ZSpheres. So again, it's just a preview to kind of help you visualize what you're trying to build. Think of this as an armature. If you're in the sculpting world, you're just laying out some wire before you start applying clay, but you have the freedom in the digital world to adjust your armature at any point in time. So hopefully that answered that question. Great question, by the way. Can we use Sculptris Pro SnakeBrush to create such form? Is it a better option? So I wouldn't say it's a better option, because Sculptris is one of many ways to do it. It's whether or not the option is better for what you're trying to achieve. So for example, this is actually relatively clean quads, and if I wanted to use this mesh and maybe animate it, then I would say Sculptris is not a good approach unless you're planning on doing manual retopology. But these are nice and clean quads, and this is usable mesh, so I may want to attempt to do something with this mesh, and maybe I don't want to change that mesh. So imagine this is an approved animated mesh, and now I don't want to adjust it, but I do want to make some changes. Then Sculptris is destructive in that nature, because as soon as I turn on a brush like SnakeHook, and I say, yep, got my SnakeHook brush, say, yep, that's fine, and then I turn on my Sculptris down here, now it starts destroying that mesh. This mesh is no longer usable for animation, right? I'd have to go in and clean that up. You know, I just broke the mold with this. Where Sculptris is your best friend, and I would consider being the better option, is when you're sketching or still designing and getting your forms and your volumes figured out. And then, yeah, something like this would be a really great option, because then you can create freely and effectively at any point in time. And it's okay to combine the mesh. It's just more of like, you know, it's more of like, is it the right option for what you're trying to achieve? And that's where I would say, you know, something like this I use more for like when I'm sketching, instead of trying to like have for a final model. Again, if you're in the toy world though, you know, or you're in the collectibles world and you're like, geometry is no issue, then yeah, go right ahead and utilize it. It is really, you know, there's a lot of like decision makings with what the product is also going to be at the end of the day. So I would say that there's a lot of freedom there, that you get to pick and choose what it is makes the most sense. But as you can see here, I could take this now new mesh, and I could start really just manipulating on the fly and getting something that might look pretty good. So it is really up to you, but again, it's all about the process. Great questions, guys. What's up, B? You're welcome, Irene. You're welcome. What's up? What's up? How's it going? All right, cool. So let's actually turn off Sculptris. I personally love Sculptris. I just don't embrace it enough, just because I really like my workflow with the way I do things. But there's been some times where Sculptris has helped me out with some great details. So, okay. So now here we got toes. So as you saw, what I did with the hands was I was able to like take the two fingers and merge them together. But here is something that's a little bit more unique. First off is that Nightcrawler actually has some big feet. And two, his feet also have two toes. He has two toes. So here, what I'm actually going to do, instead of trying to actually come through and make this mesh work for me, I already have a good shape of the foot. So I'm literally just going to cut off his toes. That's it. I'm going to cut off his toes. No more toes for this man. I'm going to increase my resolution a little bit. Adjust my brush size. I'm going to come through, grab a completely different mask, so mask pen. I'm going to mask off this section right here. And maybe, I'll start with one toe at a time. Let's do this. And because we're in DynaMesh, beauty of DynaMesh, I'm just going to go ahead and stretch this out. Say something like that. I'm going to rebuild that. And I'm going to grab this guy, come over here, stretch this out as well, and rebuild that. And I got the toes that I need. Now, of course, they'll need a little bit of TLC, but they're in place. Blockouts always start in the valley of the suck. So if you're trying to get into details too quickly, refrain from that because it's not going to be super helpful. You're really just going for the looks and feels and the vibes of said character. Now here, I did mention Sculptris Pro and needing a little bit of like, I can embrace it more. Here's where I can embrace it. I could just start, coming through and actually, stretch this out, rebuild the surface. But if I would like to, I can probably grab something. Let's go back to that SnakeHook brush. Yeah, we'll just skip that for now. We'll come through here, maybe here. I'll start creating that arch. Say something like that. So this is where Sculptris can help you out because again, you're embracing the fact that you're sketching, and then when you're done, you can rebuild. So that's another cool way to use it. I definitely applaud the artists that have moved away from DynaMesh to use Sculptris. I kind of combine the methods, especially here. Like I want to make a big change and I don't want to go up and adjust my Sculptris settings. So I want to make some big changes and I don't really mind the adaptiveness of the brush because I'll just end up rebuilding it. There we go. Okay, I'm going to grab my clay build up. My speech is amazing today. Come through and start adding some of the knuckles of this area. Cool. Just getting the main vibes out there. Not really worried too much about anything else at the moment. Okay. Now we're going to go ahead and kind of work him and slim him down a little bit and then rebuild some of this anatomy. Yeah, it's good for adding local detail without adding high res everywhere, but for concepting, not final mesh. Yep. What's up, Happy Extruder? Happy to see you. I love the feature when you hold Alt and SnakeHook, it snaps to the surface. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It is super amazing. And yeah, A-Cube is a Sculptris wizard for sure. Okay. So I'm going to go through and I'm just going to kind of slim him down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is press and hold Control and just kind of make him just a little bit less bulky. Rebuild this mesh over here. Let's get DynaMesh. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Looks like he's wearing gloves at the moment. So maybe here, let's actually select this hand and we could scale this in. Let's turn local sim back on. Maybe get this going and then start blending this in. Because I actually, before I do any type of clothing, he's pretty skin tight with his superhero suit. So we're going to try to conform to all of the skin tightness. Okay, here I'm actually going to move this down. Instead of just grabbing a big brush and just dragging it, I'm going to introduce Move Infinite, which is B, M, and then N. And this will allow me to not only move the mesh, but infinitely in depth. So I can literally just drag this straight down, and I know everything about that mesh just changed. Let's scale that down just a little bit. And then let's recenter this. And let's send this back here. Let's go back to regular move. And we're just kind of blending these in with each other. But the reason why I separated them again is because I want to have some more resolution in the feet. And I can always merge things back. Did you choose which X-Men character you're going to sculpt? Yeah, I held a poll over on my Instagram, and people chose Nightcrawler, so that is what we're doing. And if you guys like the poll, then we could definitely do more of that. Because I actually had a lot of fun seeing how everybody's thoughts were. I narrowed it down to a couple of the characters selected that I thought would be really cool, and that had the most initial votes, and then you guys voted on the last two. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at adjusting some of this anatomy. Here's some of my reference. I picked a few pictures from Google, and I really like this body type here. I think that matches fairly well. So we're going to go ahead and start coming in and refining this a little bit. Again, just moving some bigger forms, putting in some landmarks. Not going too crazy. Drop the intensity down. So I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of a fairly simple structure here. We get to decide how shredded this guy needs to be. You voted for Spider-Man, but Nightcrawler's definitely more unique. Absolutely, yeah. I was secretly hoping for a Spider-Man, just because I was like, man, how many variations of Spider-Man there are now, which is insane, but also super exciting too. I won't spoil anything, but if you guys have seen the new Across the Spider-Verse now, I really loved it. No spoilers, but I thought it was really cool. Okay, here. So we're going to go ahead and just... I don't like sculpting abs symmetrically, but I like placing them in symmetrically. That makes sense. I change it almost immediately once I start getting into more details, but just visually see that and where things are at. I definitely will put them in. I also will take like the damn standard, and I'll start drawing in some areas in which there are going to be some muscle landmarks. Let's get some striations here. So we're going to go ahead and just indicate a few. Get a few in there. Going for just a little bit more of like, not super detailed, just getting the impression that it's there. I'll refine it later. And I just constantly want to move around. Get a little bit of a rib cage in there. Nice, nice. I haven't seen it yet. I heard the animation was really well done. The animation is really cool. Yeah, it's really well done. Okay, let's take a look here real fast. So again, I'm going to take the intensity down of this, get a bigger brush size, and now I'm just going to go ahead and start indicating some of these lines here. This is more mental note for me than anything else. Just to know where things need to be. This isn't necessarily final. I recommend no thinking about it too terribly much when you're doing the block out, but pay attention to those major forms where things need to be and put those in the right place. You can always refine later, but in the initial block out, just getting something that's looking correct and close enough is going to help you out a lot. Let's get something that looks like right in this spot. Same thing in this area. Let's just get a bigger brush size. I like to work with big brush sizes in the beginning. Just try to get those forms out just a teeny bit. And then again, come through. We can get a little bit higher in the intensity. Kind of just sculpt this in here. Just getting that landmark in there. Very cool. Okay. Let's go ahead and just hit save real quick. Here with Game Chain, absolutely. Hey, what's going on, Giza? How you doing? Or Guysy, how you doing? Awesome booth setup. I had to wish I would have attended, but it must have been fun. That's nice. The line on his back, oh, did I use the lazy mouse or is your arm that steady? For this part right here, I just used the lazy mouse. Great call, dude. Chase, great call. So what I did, I wish my hand was that steady. It's really not. So what I did was with the damn standard, when you have lazy mouse turned on, it doesn't matter if it's set to 1 or if it's set to like 200. When it's just turned on, what you can do is as you're drawing, as soon as you put pen to clay, just press and hold shift. And now what you get is you get an angle in which you can actually draw that line. So if I want a line at 35 degrees or 40 degrees from the point of connection, I could come here and be like, 35, and then I let go of shift and it draws a super straight line. So here what I did was because I'm fully symmetrical, I just placed it, pressed and hold shift super fast, got 0, let go, and that made a super straight line. So that's also really good for hard surface when you're trying to do like hard surface work. So and can you imagine if my hand was that steady? I mean, with lazy mouse it can be, but no, that was definitely lazy mouse. Okay, I'm gonna need to just reference some back anatomy just for a second. So again, if you're referencing anatomy and you don't have an écrochet or anything else near you, although I definitely recommend that you do it, get an écrochet. What's really cool is I like to just Google, I type in Google to Google and you will break Google. So I will just type in back anatomy and then I'll get something that looks like this. I try not to get flexing anatomy positions too much in a regular pose until I know the pose I'm going for. But it is kind of cool to see how the muscles are engaging in certain poses. This will help your statues get further along when you're pushing for posing, because as soon as you do this, everything in your body just changed from relaxed to an engagement. So you have a lot of stretching and bending that tends to happen, right? But in the initial stage, sometimes what I will do is I will reference like what is being activated in this action, but then I'll compare it to something that looks a little bit more like this. And that way I know where the main muscle groups are. And so I usually set that off to the side or drag that into my pure ref just to get the sense. And I'll probably like grab 1 or 2 and I'll throw that in with my anatomy reference. And then I can lean in on that just a little bit more. And then of course too, it's always helpful to look at an actual person. So I will do that as well. I'll come back here and I'll type in back anatomy, male model, because we're dealing with a male character. And so I will take a look at something that looks like this just to kind of see that engagement, what that looks like. Drag this over here. So I get the real world kind of fat pads and stuff like that on how the back should look. And then I usually will come through and drop this back down. So it's super important to always just take a look at how that should be and then reference that accordingly. So like right here, he's going to be relatively in shape. So I was putting scapulas, but there's not a lot of need to do that at the moment. But it's good to have the right placement of stuff. Yeah, Casey, I would say though, I'm gonna be devil's advocate. Having a nice écrochet, that tactile feel in the real world, picking it up and seeing it in your hands is really helpful. So just consider it, is my point. And I know here there's actually quite a few muscles in this area. And this goes like that. It kind of wraps over just a little bit because then we have some point in this area. It's actually a flat spot. So I'm going to carve this out just a little bit. Get a little bit of a flat spot here by the deltoid. And then the muscles kind of built up over it. So there's always a little bit. Doesn't matter how big or bulky you are. There's always a little bit of a flat plane right in this area. Usually blends really well. Stylized animation, especially if you like anime, tend to like make that a super sharp plane change. So that's definitely where you get that shape right in there. By having that nice flat area allows you to get this kind of transition between everything. So a super helpful way of getting that. Just make it a little bit flat. Now for the biceps, I'm going to move on to the biceps a little bit. I like to actually kind of put a little flat indicator here. Start to build up some of the forearm muscles. Forearm muscles, they go down and then they rotate too. So at the point of where your inner elbow is, and then all that goes down, but then it also rotates, right? Because you have your rotator, you have your, I am terrible with actual anatomy names, but your forearm will rotate, right? So here you'll be able to kind of get that nice natural buildup by just going with the flow and then knowing that this actually rotates on over. And just take your time with it. I started from a base mesh because I knew I was going to get a lot of, we're going to get into some anatomy today. So, and then here, if I want to indicate a bicep change, again, so I'm going to take the damn standard, I'm going to come through, hold shift, and get a nice straight line coming through. And then I build up the bicep by meaning 2 with a clay buildup brush. And I tend to build them up just a little bit of each other. And then I end up moving that line eventually. But what's cool about doing it in that way, in my opinion, is that it kind of just helps solidify that you're working with 2 different muscle groups. And then you can come through and then edit that out. So again, we're just kind of coming through. Anatomy is something that takes time, and I still am studying anatomy as much as possible. I feel like anatomy is that one thing that I'm always going to be referencing and practicing because it's just going to make my characters that much better. So come through here. Just kind of make sure I don't blend that in too much. We'll get into some serratus muscles just a little bit more. Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. Super appreciate that. Just love making art and hanging out with you guys. It's super awesome. All right. Come through. Let's get some back muscles going in. And then we'll move down to the legs and the buttock region. Bam. Kind of get that in there. And what's neat too is I don't have to worry about too much about forms or volumes as much, just because most of that with the base mesh is worked out for you. So I get to just kind of like enhance what's already there, and that's nice too sometimes. You don't always have to come in and start from scratch. It's important to start from scratch, don't get me wrong, but you don't always have to. Okay, I'm gonna hit save, and then we're gonna look at some leg anatomy. And if you guys are curious on what leg anatomy I'm working with, it's the most important inspiration. It's the squirrel. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to come here. And the way I look at legs is, the way I tend to look at legs is basically, it's basically an arm. Okay? That's how I end up establishing it. I look at the calf as like and forearm, and I look at the actual thighs as your bicep, and then where it connects to your buttocks area, the gluteus maximus, I look at that as the deltoid. So that's how, in my head, it makes sense. So it's just another way of looking at it, but it's very similar in structure. There's just some changes that make up what it is. So, you know, yeah, there's more muscles and such, but when you're kind of looking at it, it's helpful for me at least to kind of give like some sort of like, oh, this makes sense moment, right? So here, I'm going to go ahead and sketch in a couple lines. And just to help you guys see the lines I'm seeing, let's go ahead and come up here to render. Let's go to preview AO. Let's turn on occlusion. And this way you can actually see more of the lines that I've made, as nasty as they are at the moment. That's okay. Just getting a lot of the shape in here. And then again, to coming in and emphasizing some of this. Now, what's cool about the area, this area right here, is that you kind of can look at this area as a Wolverine head. Kind of the way the muscles kind of come up and around. You kind of come in here. Kind of get these in. Let's get these shapes going in this area. So you start carving this area in here. Push that in just a little bit. I'll look at the side here just to make sure. Getting this area right. Because that's super important. There's a connection right up here. These muscle fibers end up going in this direction, and then they kind of come down, actually. They kind of more like go in this direction here. So sometimes I'll draw this out just to kind of understand where that connection is happening and where those muscle fibers come through. Not that I'm going to give them a super shredded behind, but you never know when you're trying to like get some shapes in where that actually needs to be. And then because he's going to be in a suit, we're just going to kind of emphasize some of the important muscles, but we're not going to go too crazy. So like here, we'll build this muscle up. I like to try to go with the muscle fibers. Boop, 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 boop. We got to get Pablo's new ZBrush baked in. Dude's a wizard. Yeah, absolutely, Sloto. Absolutely. Dude, Pablo is just a beast, man. And that reminds me, that leads me to the next point. If you guys aren't subscribed to this channel, there's tons of artists that come over here who do a lot of great work. So if you're watching this for the first time, please subscribe. Hit that sub button. I'll be that guy. Cool. All right, so we got this going on here. We're going to start blending this in a little bit. And this is just kind of puffing this area up just a little bit. Let's get some hamstrings on him. And I've noticed too, when we get into a pose, and maybe that's what we're going to end up doing, I'm just trying to get everything kind of blocked in here because the pose I want to go for has a lot of dynamic feel. Honestly, I think what we're going to do is we're going to pose him early before getting into it too much. And then the next stream, we could focus on getting his face in there and his hair. And again, I'm leaning towards this one so much that I think that's what we're going to end up doing. We're going to use this pose in our final scene, but I really am digging the traditional outfit. So we're going to be kind of compiling our own thought process and pushing that. So once we get a little bit more of this anatomy blocked out, we'll kick it out to a pose. We'll figure out the pose, and then we'll finish it off as a final statue. So I think that's going to be super fun. All right, let's get a couple more things in here real fast. Going to get the shield of a kneecap. I always look at this as kind of a shield. It's like that's the main shape. Something like such. And then I'm going to get the damn standard in here. We're going to get some of this anatomy brought in there. And then the calf is kind of fun too, because what's cool about the calf is that, again, the calf in itself has two major muscle groups. So we can actually separate these out. Just helps me when I'm looking at like how to actually do that. It's going to help me come through and identify some of these shapes a little bit easier. And then there's a tendon that comes down in this area like this. And that's the connection point in this area here, right? So now we can build up this area. And what I want to do is really emphasize this muscle as being a little bit bigger. So I'm going to end up moving that like this. We're going to give him some nice calves. And let's actually bulk up his... I'm going to use the move infinite. We're going to bulk up his legs just a little bit too. Yeah, say something like that. What is my favorite way to sculpt characters? Or, I'm sorry, to pose characters. I don't know where I was on. My favorite way to pose characters at the moment is currently Transpose Master, but I'm playing with a few other ways of doing it with some other tools. So once I'm going to play around with a couple other things. But right now, I do everything manually because I feel like it's the best way to get more expression. So that's kind of my take on it. Did I start from a base mesh? Yes, I did. I started from a base mesh because I really just wanted to get into how fun this character is. And we're going to get into posing really quickly. So it's something that I wanted to just kind of like get in immediately as soon as possible, which also is helpful with the fact that we kind of split him up a little bit. All right, let's get this bone just established a little bit more. Just doing a little bit of cleanup here, right there. Let's go ahead. I like to draw this line down in this area. Just let me emphasize that just a little bit more. And then here we're going to make sure. Let's make sure in this area right back here, there's a muscle that actually comes. So if we're looking at it from, we got this that wraps here, it comes around. And then that comes in and that attaches right there. And I'm actually going to carve in just a little bit right here in this area. There we go. And then this also attaches right about there. Okay, cool. Do a little bit of a smooth. Okay, so we have something. Very, very rough, very loose, but we have something. And the reason why we're going to leave it here is now we're going to get into some posing. Although I think this area is a little bit too bulky. So let's actually make a little bit. I keep hitting the wrong button. Let's actually grab the move brush. Going to make just a little bit of a change. Push that down just a little bit. Okay. So now let's go ahead and get in here. Now I'm going to hit save next. It's going to give me a new iteration. And now let's get into posing. So I like to use Transpose Master. However, there's almost no real need to move into Transpose Master just yet because I want to chop the body up to get this pose in DynaMesh and then rebuild it asymmetrically. So again, the pose that we're going to be aiming for, and I will leave that up here, is going to be this pose. I think this pose is really solid, and we'll probably change it just so that we have a little bit of our own take on it, but this will get us 90% of the way there. So let's go ahead and clean this up. And now what I'm going to do is, again, not worry too much about how rough and ugly the anatomy is. What I am worried about is making sure that we come through. Let's move that there. Let's come through and we start making the pose a lot better. So I'm going to go ahead and separate here where his elbow is going to be. Just going to mask that off, and then I'm going to go ahead and Control W. I'm going to select this region here. And then I'm actually going to select here not here. So I'm actually going to come through here and select just underneath this deltoid. And this is where I'll probably come through, and I will make a little bit of a cleanup to this mask. So mask under here, but mask this section off, because I'm actually going to separate this deltoid out. So that's fine right there. So then I'm going to come through, Control W, so that I have something like this. Okay. Let's go ahead, go back to the select rec. Let's grab this guy. Now here, I'm gonna actually break this up in a couple sections. So you kind of can, you can actually really arch your back. And so I'm gonna isolate where just the rib cage is mainly. So I'm actually gonna isolate this section. And then I'm gonna turn around, let's hit solo. And I'm going to isolate this section next. Say something like that. So that's going to give me a couple different selection sets. Say something like that. This color is also too similar to that other color. There we go. We'll do that. And then here, let's come through. I'm going to select this section. Now I'm also going to come in and do a custom paint. Again, same thing with kind of the buttocks area here. I'm going to come through, and I think I'm going to bend that right about there. So I am sculpting Nightcrawler, and I always talk through my process and answer questions where need. So if you guys have any questions, you can always come through. But this is the ZBrush Live team, where we, as ZBrush artists, will come through and go through our processes and how we do from point A to point B. So I am I'm a lead trainer at Maxon, and I teach ZBrush professionally. So what you're catching is my normal Wednesday live stream. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and hit that guy right there. And then what I'm going to do here, I might actually just keep this line super simple. I'm going to slice curve this right above the knee, but under this area. And if I wanted to, if I really wanted to get fun, clear this mask off. Actually might try something new this time around and isolate the knee itself. I don't usually do that, but it might make for an easier selection. So we're going to try something new today. But we'll leave the elbow alone here because usually you have to pull that section back and then rebuild. So then we have something like this. So now we went through all this trouble to get some rough anatomy, some other shapes in. Now I'm going to hit groups. And again, I'm just going to go ahead and DynaMesh that. Now this is going to break this up into different sections. And now from here, I'm going to go ahead and hit save. I'm going to go Z plugin. I'm going to go Transpose master. And then I'm going to go to T-pose mesh. So we're very, very loose and stuff like that. The Z4D plugin is something I'm very interested in trying to figure out if I would save in 3D print pipeline. That's something I'm playing with too, absolutely. Sometimes when I use the move brush, not topological, it kind of freezes or shudders upon moving, then snaps in position. Are you sure you're not with, are you sure that you don't have dynamic subdiv turned on when you're using the move brush? Or check the, sometimes check the intensity too. I've accidentally turned the intensity down. Best book for anatomy? I always recommend the Anatomy for Sculptors, just because it's something that I think is really, really good early on for artists to look at anatomy without having to go super major into medical anatomy, because that's almost like medical anatomy is almost too much information, especially out the gate. Like what you're really looking for is the major forms that make up the bulk of the body. That's really what you're sculpting in. When you get into detailing, then you'll start considering things like fat pads and the other muscles underneath that might bloat or inflate other muscles or vice versa. So I would say start with Anatomy for Sculptors. That's one of my favorite books. And then from there, start diving into deeper anatomy when you really want to improve upon that knowledge. So that's my go-to opinion recommendation. Okay, great. So now we have all these different groups. I split them all up. Now I'm going to hit auto groups, and that's going to give me this. So now all those are now different pieces, and now we can start making a fun pose. So first things first, I always lead with the hips when I pose anything. So I'm just going to take the entire thing. I'm going to put the gizmo in the hip position, and he is leaning forward. So that's where we're going to go. Leaning forward here, say something like that. Okay, great. And now what we're going to end up doing is let's start. I will do a leg movement here. So I'm actually going to select this area here. So what I'm going to do, and this is a quick way to make selections when you have to select multiple polygroups instead of coming through tapping, inversing, and then tapping a bunch. Like that's a lot of work. Instead, just do a group selection of the majority of the objects that you want to have shown. So I'm going to cut off just a little bit of that thigh, but I want the thigh to show, so it's going to give me that selection. Then I'm going to hit Control, Shift, and A, and that's going to grow the rest of the remaining selection. Then I can mask that area off. And now here I can come in, and now we're going to start moving his leg. Now I'm going to try to do this from a pivot point, so I'm going to move this more like here. And what's cool is that legs just don't move straight up. Like there's always a bit of movement to there's a bit of swing to them, right? So legs just don't come up like this. They also will move outwards. So now we're going to want to start positioning his legs where they're going to make sense. And this is going to take a little bit of time, right? And because we have a ball and socket joint in our hips, we can get a little bit of rotation to that as well. And the connection that I'm really wanting to achieve without giving him full splits is knowing that this joint here in the gluteus maximus and minimus is going to be connecting upwards. So, and then I want this to be, he's pretty flexible, right? So we're going to move him up, say something like that. Doop doop doop. And should do the exact thing for my posing, but I don't cut up the torso as you do. I'll have to try that in the next few sculpts. Absolutely, Frank. Yep. Oh yeah, I absolutely saved it, buddy. Comics legend, you're a legend, man. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Shortcut always suddenly stop working, and I have to restart PC in order for shortcuts to come back. Any solutions here? Your shortcuts automatically suddenly stop working. Is it possible that like it worked while you're in ZBrush and then something happened and then they stopped working? I'm not too sure. That could be a hardware issue. That also could just be you accidentally hit Control and Alt on something and reselected that hotkey shortcut. What I would say is maybe go up to your preferences, come up to your hotkey, and then hit restore, and that should restore the previous hotkeys that you have saved. Or you can come in and load, and wherever you have saved it, typically if you're on PC, you'd want to go ahead and go into your program files. If you're on the Maxon version of ZBrush, you would go here to Maxon ZBrush 2023. If you were on the Pixelogic still, you can go in the Pixelogic folder. And then from there, I believe it's Z Startup. Yep, Z Startup, hotkeys. And then this is where your hotkey selection would be. And then you would just reload that. And then you would come through and then make sure to hit store and then save that. So try that. The restore should work, but it sounds like maybe you've accidentally cut them off. But if not, there could be a bigger issue. But I will say, I'll be the first to say, if there's something technical like that, reach out to the support team, because that's one of the reasons why we have a support team, is that we don't always know every problem that occurs, and it's possible that you're running into something that is beyond just a simple fix. So I'm going to drop the support line, and you can hit them up and start a case, and they can help you out. That's part of the reason why you pay for software. So you get that extra help. So definitely check that out. Okay, and then how did you get the group selection when you sliced with your Control-Alt-Select? Okay, yeah, so you're talking about how did I do this? If you're talking about that auto grow that I did, so what I did was I came through and I made a major selection by pressing Control-Shift, dragging that out, selecting everything except for all of the last one I want to show, then I hit Control-Shift-A. If you're talking about how did I get all this polygroup selection in Transpose Master, because I sliced up my body into different polygroups and into different meshes, I then just came here to polygroups and turn on auto groups, and every time I do that, it's going to give me a new selection when it looks at the mesh that is not welded to each other. Since these are all independent meshes, that's the quickest way to do that. Now, how did I swap the group select when I had sliced? How did I swap it? Like this? With the swapping, so you select what you want, and then you press hold Control Shift, and then you just because I'm having the slice curve, you're actually seeing me do two different actions at once. But if you have the slice curve selected and you're trying to swap back and forth, you just do the slice and then you hit Control Shift again, and then that inverts it, and then that flips it. If you're just using a normal selection, like a select lasso, just doing a select motion somewhere out here in space, not on the model, will switch it back and forth. Yeah, but yeah, you're watching me do twice the work real quick because I was lazy and I didn't switch out my selection brush. Cool. Great question. No, great question. Yeah, it was the swapping. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that was me just doing that again. So dragging this out and then Control Shift again. If you just do that, Control Shift tap, you'll swap between those two actions. Good call. Sometimes, man, I'll tell you, sometimes I do a thing and I'm like just so used to doing that thing, right? So here I'm going to select part of this guy, come through, grab all that. I'm going to hide this and then grow that out, mask this off. Now I'm going to put this here, boop. So what I'm going to do, while I'm still going to be moving the knee and the shin mostly together, this is something that I'm like, okay, I may want to make a bigger adjustment with. So we'll see how that works. Okay, I also need to line up shin to toes. We want to make sure that we get the movement right. So bending this over, bringing this down like this. So let's actually, yeah. Just move this more like this. Really going to push this. So this is going to end up rounding quite a lot. So I'm going to move this here. And then I think it might be easier. That's why we're trying this. We're going to grab this guy right here. Mask this off. Just kind of manipulate. Nah, that's not going to be easier. I still have to make the same movement. All right. That's fine. I still have to make the same adjustment. But what I'm going to do is maybe rotate this so it fits a little bit more like such. Bring this a little bit more here. Yeah. So I still have to make that major change. That's fine. It's not easier than I thought it would be. So almost giving myself a little bit more work than I intend to. That's fine. That's okay. I'm going to grab the move topological because I'm tired of masking. So I'm going to hit B and the M and then I meant J. Nope, wrong one. There we go. Move topological because I just want to move. Tired of masking that section off. So I'm just going to grab a big brush and I'm going to start adjusting the polygroup themselves. And we're going to need to clean this up. So I never worry about how nasty this is looking. What I worry about is getting the pose close enough. That's more important than anything else. Getting it close enough for what we need. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to grab this guy, grow this out, mask that off. Didn't realize you pressed it again. Yep, 100%. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it's crazy. All right. Where are we at on time? Oh, we got time. We got time. So we're going to move this up, and we're going to move this out. Whee! There you go. Spider-Man land. The Spider-Man one. Okay, so the reason why I'm moving these independent too is that I also don't want the exact same, I want asymmetry. So I want this one to probably be a little bit higher. Do that one. Let's mask this one off, right? Yeah, I want this one to be a little bit higher. So rotate this around. Woo, look at that. Look at that. That's not good. Let's mask off that. Let's see. Cool. All right, we got those nice little spikes showing up. That just means we got poly groups in an area that is definitely not friendly. And that's okay. All right, we also need to move his feet a little bit closer because we're going to put him on some sort of base. There we go. Say something like this. Okay. You know, I'm almost inclined to say that separating the knee, while at first, I don't know. I actually have to see how I feel about that. Because, like, I'm finding it kind of useful, but almost an extra step. I don't know if that makes any sense. But, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. we have to see how I feel about this. I've done a thing that I'm like, not sure if I want to keep doing that. All right. Very, very cool. All right, this is looking pretty good. So this is also, too, why we didn't move into detailing anatomy too much. Look how much we've destroyed this. Like, this just got totally riggedy wrecked. Okay, now here, I'm gonna grab this. We're just pulling at this point now. Cool. Gonna smooth this down here. Let's move this up in this area. We're gonna really like smash this together. So I'm not worried about the topology, not at all. Don't care about it. It's all about just getting the forms and volume, and I'm gonna rebuild this area. So it's all about getting this close enough. Close enough. Smooth that down just a little bit. I'm going to do a light smooth to get this kind of cleaned up a bit. Same thing here. Stretch that in. Again, understanding where these muscles are connecting into the leg is going to help the pose seem more realistic. Or more believable, rather. Going for a little bit more of a semi-realistic, comic-y approach. There we go. And again, why I like to do this manually is it's also helping me with my anatomy knowledge. Grab this, grow this out. Let's go ahead. Let's pop this over here. Let's come in. Let's make sure we check the questions. After our miniature is decimated for printing and need to make changes with Sculptris Pro because triangles, and later would like to decimate change low area to low poly. but only can decimate the whole mesh. Prefer to have an option that to make a partial decimation. Oh, you're talking about like you'd like to have a where you just DynaMesh one section, and then it's just affecting that section. Is that what you're asking? See, that's kind of where Sculptris comes into play, because Sculptris allows you don't have to redecimate. If you decimate your model and then you're going in and adding detail with Sculptris, unless you're really hitting like millions of topology again, there's almost no point in redecimating. Again, but that is going to be project dependent on what you're trying to achieve. So I'd be curious to know how heavy your files are. But I would say that's kind of the point of Sculptris, is to ensure that you actually can just focus on one section instead of a whole scene recreation. Because the thing with DynaMesh is that it's viewport dependent, so there's definitely a lot of avenues happening at that time. But you can also try, I don't know how many of you know this, but if you go over here to geometry and you go to DynaMesh, under resolution, there is a secondary algorithm that you can actually activate. And doop 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 doop, and I believe that helps hold the resolution a bit better. So if my memory serves me right, so I would say definitely give that a shot as well. Okay. Exactly. Nightcrawler. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this head placement here, so I'm going to keep his head symmetrical for now. I'm not going to go into final pose just yet, because I may want to find his face in symmetry. But we're going to get most of the way there. So let's do this. Let's grab this guy. Oop, I lied to you. Let's grab this guy. Okay, go ahead. Control Shift. Yes, perfect. Matt! What's up, dude? What's up? What's up? How's it going, man? You see what you guys picked in the voting? See what happened here, man? Okay, so now thinking about it, so obviously this is going to get stretched. It's going to move forward in this area. Like I'm now pushing everything back. So what I'm going to lead this next part at the elbow. So here I'm going to come through, then nope, wrong one. I'm going to come through, drag that up, drag that down a little bit. I want to lead this with the elbow, because you want to make sure your elbow can only go so far back, And so here we want to make sure that we move the hand where it needs to be. I'm trying to really come through and preserve the actual movement. So this actually feels like it's flared out a little bit. So we'll say something like this. Okay. We take this one as well. Mask that one off. Just make sure that's all masked off here too. Gonna move this down. I've seen you work on this. Thanks, buddy. Thanks. There we go. Get a little bit of a movement happening. And also, too, we're going to rotate this around a little bit. Gonna place that there. Let's actually move this up. There we go. Let me get some more straight lines here. Let's get this moved in like such. There we go. Okay, so we're going to have that one come through. Let's grab that. Boom. Just mask that section off. My fingers are moving faster than my brain wants to handle. I'm going to turn on symmetry. Check this out. I'm going to turn on symmetry. I don't know how many of you noticed, but my model's still relatively in, quote, T-pose symmetry mode. So, like, I haven't rotated him around. So in this case, I wanted to bring the gizmo on over here. So I just turned on X for symmetry, touched that little dot that shows up right there, and that switches it over. And I'm sure 99% of you know about that, but then sometimes I'll do that to help position my gizmo without a full reset, right? And then I just turn symmetry back off, and then now I don't have to do a full position again. I just kind of get it close enough to where it needs to be without like rotating it here, rotating it there. So just a little thought that I thought I just literally was like, I'm gonna try this. There we go, that works. Okay, we really broke this mesh, guys. Just heads up. Gonna move this here, kind of rotate this. Actually, I want this one to not be as far back, so maybe we'll do that instead. Kind of pull this up just a little bit, right in that section. Good job, Ian. Grab that one. Boop. I'm gonna put that guy right there. Rotate this around, move this in this position, and then let's go ahead. It's actually, so this is going to be a little bit of a different spot. Again, we're going to kind of rotate that around. Now here, I'm going to grab his hand. Going to rotate his hand around. There we go. Okay, so you see all these little stringy bits? I'm gonna force smooth them down. It's super important to do that. Now we're gonna take the move topological again. And actually, before we do that, let's come through here. Let's grab the select rec. Let's grab this guy. Let's mask this section off. Ian is Spider-Man. Who's Iron Man? That's me! I think you should have done Iron Man. That's pretty funny. Maybe one day, man. Maybe one day. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to be rotating this deltoid. Okay, so I'm just going to push that. Do a light grab here. Smooth this in. We'll fix the anatomy. Not worried about too much of that. Now, the deltoid actually goes pretty far down the arm, so don't be shy with it. Push it down there. Just mask this section off. Notice that when I'm making my mask too, I am trying to respect and honor the joint itself and the muscles that actually would move with said joint. So I'm going to invert this. So I'm grabbing a little bit beyond, but I'm softening it up. So when I make this rotation, I get that chest movement as well. So this now just helps make a little bit more sense, right? So that's super important. It's always good to try to make the movements as realistic as possible. Again, we're going to be coming through and making some anatomy changes to blend it and make sure it looks good. So we're going for close enough, but you still want it to be as close as you can make it. We'll end up making some more popular changes as well. Now we need a tail for him. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use the select lasso. I'm going to come through. I'm going to select this area right here. Yes! Yes, I have unlocked a hidden feature. I have unlocked the hidden feature. Yes. Love it. Am I going to make a path effect? I don't know. I don't know, maybe. All right. Let's let that think for a second. That just means I have more work to do. The take a break feature. Yep. Man, you know what I say? It happens to all of us, even at a professional level. It happens. I have never worked with any software that has never crashed. Like every software I've ever touched has crashed at some point in time. It just happens. Part of the process. The growing pains. What I say is that's the time to stand up, stretch out a little bit, do all that good jizzity jazz. Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, so now how can we recover from this? Because I was in T-pose. I was in Transpose master, right? So that's where I was at. So let's go through and how we can actually pull this out. So there is a ZTL that gets auto-saved, and everything is merged together. There's no way I'm going to try to push this through Transpose master. So what I'm going to do is I'm literally just going to continue working with this guy right here. That is a crazy, yeah. So that's fine. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go save as, and I'm going to move back in, and I'm going to call this the block 003. All right. I had my T-pose in 002. So now we're going to go 003, and we're just going to work with that. So now I'm going to come through here. I'm going to finish the pose because that's super important. So I'm going to go ahead and just start selecting all the stuff that I need to finish said pose. Great, wonderful, life happens. And now I'm going to come in here. I'm going to kind of push his chest up a little bit. I want some more of that dynamic feel. I am keeping him, like I said, somewhat relatively symmetrical for now. Grab this guy. Let's put it back into some symmetry. Let's move this up. Let's get a little bit of that chest expansion going. Happens, it happens. I'll just cry tonight. That's how I'll put myself to sleep. All right, great. Perfect. Let's go ahead and come through here. Grab this guy. There we go. All right, let's get that shape. Let's get that shape in there. Okay, let's go ahead and move some of this in. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need that kind of anatomy. We don't need that for him. That's fine. I'm gonna pull out of symmetry for this. Yeah, I just sliced them into sections. No, not with the slice tool. I sliced them using slice curve, and then I did DynaMesh by groups, and that's how I was able to slice them on up to get them into pose. It's a little thing that we do. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff happening in this area that we need to fix. I'm literally gonna smooth this out to help maybe correct some of that. We got a lot of floaties here. There we go. Okay. All right, let's do that. Now let's do one other thing. He's already attached. So I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate him real fast, hide this guy, and then let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and do a insert primitive brush. No, not half. Let's go BIT for the full deal, the full experience. We're going to go cylinder, and I'm going to go right. So the tailbone is right about, it's just under this here, if I'm not too mistaken. It's, you know, I personally don't have a tail. That's okay. I'm going to place that right in there. Let's do this. We're going to come in. We're going to scale this down just a little bit. Do a little scale inflate. And then I'm actually going to go here to split hidden. Or sorry, split unmasked points. So we're going to call this his main body. And we're going to call this his tail. Okay, and now we have the gizmo here. Let's go ahead and let's do this. Nope, not that one. We're going to come here to the little cogwheel. And can you guess? Bend curve, baby! And now we're going to come through, add a couple points. We're going to start bending this all out of shape. I'm going to grab this guy right here. So I'm actually going to want that to go that way, which is going to be cool. I'm going to add another by playing with these cones right here. I can now add another little guy. So now I can start making this shape here. I can come in, add this one. Let's add another cone. Let's kind of move this on up. Smooth this around. Really getting the full experience of what that is going to look like. I'm just moving that around. Move this one around. There we go. Yes. Yes. I think that's looking good. Move this guy up. Get a little bit more of that resolution happening. So I'm just kind of positioning this where we need to go. Let's move this down a little bit. Perfect. It's all about the recovery. Yeah, there we go. Did you just deflate from the gizmo? I did. Absolutely, I sure did. Would you like to know how? Let me tell you. So how I did it was, if I go ahead, I'm going to hit save. That's what's going to happen. But how I ended up doing it was, if I get let me just grab a sphere. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead, turn on symmetry. Let's do just real quick. Boom, let's just grab this, just so you can really see the change. Boom, just like that. And then let's come in here. Subtool, let's go to here, and let's just do a quick DynaMesh. Bam. Okay, great. So if you want to make something smaller, especially simple shapes, what you could do is by pressing and holding Control, you can actually do a local deflate or a inflate. But notice here, and the reason why I DynaMeshed it was I want you to see here that it's basically deformation, inflate, or deflate, right? It's the same thing. So you want to make sure that sometimes you'll get some little crunchies that happen over there. So if that happens, just be mindful of that. So just by pressing and holding Control, going to the gizmo and that nice little yellow scale factor, just go ahead and you could do a quick inflate, deflate. And so with something as low res as this guy here, it actually didn't really matter too much, especially since I'm going to be subdividing and then dynameshing that. So I just wanted the nice pose and movement. So great question. Now I'm also going to kind of push this up a little bit. I want a little bit. So tails are cool, just like capes. You get to kind of I want a nice S shape, but I want that from every angle. And that's important. I want that flow and that movement to be consistent. So at a super low resolution, I could come in here and manipulate that flow, and that's going to help me really start bringing this character to life. So as ugly as this anatomy is right now, you can definitely see just kind of how easy it is to get some nice movement happening. Okay, and we still got a lot of work to do, but this is going to be super helpful to get us the way we want. And now from here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to accept these changes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit W. If you hit W on and off with a deformer like this, you actually switch between the gizmo and the deformer. But once I move the gizmo, whoo, calm down there, Ian. Once I move the gizmo, you'll notice that that cogwheel was once orange, meaning you have an active deformer. And as soon as I move that off track, it now goes away. So you want to be careful with that. So really make sure that you're ready to do a final movement. So you can either hit accept. There we go. And then from there, I can do some subdivisions. But wait, there's more. I do want to showcase one other thing, and this is really helpful for hair. I've showed this with hair a few times. So notice that I have that orange cogwheel that showed me that a deformer is active. What I can do is if I want to duplicate that and continue using that as if this was hair, then, or some other action that I need, like maybe I have cabling and I want to have multiple cables going on, then what I can do is I can actually come over here to duplicate or just hit Control-Shift-D. And when I duplicate this, I'm going to hit solo. This is now my second tail, but notice that deformer is still active. And this is really helpful because now I can start making more changes to my quote cabling or my tail or whatnot. So I can work off of that previous version and still continue that deformer action. So that's really, really helpful when you're dealing with like cables and stuff like that, or if you have two tails, for example. So super helpful. So then here again, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to confirm this movement. I'm going to say accept. Then I'm going to subdivide a few times to give this a little bit more of a nice smooth motion, because his tail is not super, you know, it's not faceted like that. I'm going to delete lower. And if I'm feeling it, which at the moment, I might move into, you know, I might actually move. I might do this. I might move into DynaMesh. I don't know, but let's actually see. I want to add in the tip of his tail. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go here. I'm going to draw out the sphere, but I'm going to work with this separately. So I'm going to choose to come over here, split, unmasked point. And the reason why I'm going to do that is now I'm going to have this gizmo up here, and I want to work with this independently. And I'm going to open up a couple more gizmo tricks for you. So gizmo trick number one is that we did the inflate deflate by pressing and holding control and doing the deflate inflate. Now if you press and hold control and you focus on one of these little scale bars, watch what happens. Boop. I go one way and I go the other way, and I'm literally clipping this. So now I can make this nice and flat. And then I can face this. And if I want, I could press Shift, tap, get that nice view. So I want this view right here. So I just Shift, tap anywhere on an arrow, and that's going to give me that view of that subtool. So I want this view, so I'm looking straight on it. And now I'm going to use the Move Infinite. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and maybe, let's see, does this work? Let's see where I'm at. Let's see, I want dynamic. I want dynamic, there we go. Yeah, I want dynamic symmetry. But that's on X, so I'm going to come up here. So in 2023, we have the ability to do things symmetrically, which is really nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I believe, yes, it's on Y. So I'm going to come up here to my transform, turn off X, and work on Y. And now I can work on this fully symmetrical if I want. And this is one of the new changes in 2023. So now I can keep this section right here. I can keep this fully symmetrical. And then I'm going to DynaMesh it. I'm going to hit DynaMesh. Up the resolution. Oh, let's find what the picker says. The picker says it's pretty low. Let's actually up that a bit more. Let's actually up that, say something like that. There we go. Smooth that down. And again, now I'm working on this section, and I'm working on it fully symmetrical, even though we are asymmetry. What? Yep. Hey, what's up, Rodolfo? How's it going? Yeah, the bend curve modifier is great for hair. Absolutely. That's so cool. Thanks for the demo. Totally missed that. Absolutely. These are all the little Easter eggs that happen. Hey, what's happening? I'm doing good. OP Finder, I'm doing great. How are you doing? OP Finder, so on my main machine, the one I'm currently working on right now, I am actually working with a thread ripper, which is really fun and very cool. But at home, I actually just work simply with a Ryzen 7. No, yeah, Ryzen 7 with a 2080 at 48 gigs of RAM. This one is my work computer because I do a lot of video editing too. So I actually have a Threadripper 3rd gen with a 3080. Yeah, 3080 and 128 gigs of RAM. So, but with ZBrush, what's cool about ZBrush is that you don't need a heavy computer. You know, I still have an old laptop that my daughter uses that is it's like 10 years ago, kind of old, and it still runs ZBrush. ZBrush is CPU driven. There's only like a couple features that actually use the GPU aspect of it. So, and so because of that, like, you don't need a heavy system. Pretty much, like I say, anything within like a Ryzen 3 or an Intel i5 would be fine. So if you have an older system, ZBrush can definitely work. The only thing that I would say hardware is going to, quote, limit you is how high or how heavy your mesh is going to be. So if you're on an older machine, you may not be able to take it to like 50 to 90 million, but if you're on a newer machine, then you'd be able to take it up a little higher. So it just really depends on what it is you're trying to achieve, but ZBrush can be done on relatively not so powerful machines and get a lot of really great results. Okay, so here I'm actually going to do a ZRemesher. So this is my secret sauce for ZRemesh. My secret sauce for ZRemesh is to simply put, first always look at the active points and what you got going on. I only have about 8,000, so I really don't need crazy amounts of reduction in my poly count. I'm just trying to get better quads so I have a much smoother surface, because this is still very faceted. So what I'm going to do is actually say keep this the same, but I'm going to keep adapt turned on, and I'm going to go ahead and actually drop down adaptive size to 0. And what this is going to do is take a look at the quads that are being going to be produced by ZRemesher and keep them as even as possible, but still hold to the mesh and how it adapts and flows. And then you can, of course, turn on keep groups and turn that down to 0, just because, you know, if you're trying to like do any type of projection, I find this to be a really good setting, but you don't have to. And I'm going to go ahead and say ZRemesh this, and let's see what kind of little ditties that we're going to get. And then we'll see how low we can actually go. Boom. Okay, so we actually have something that's actually pretty good, but I would say we can go lower than this. So I'm going to say half. And then I'm going to go ahead, if you're on 2023, you can now do a feature called retry, which retry will take the first mesh before the ZRemesh, so the initial mesh before you first ZRemesh, and it will take a look at that mesh and then help give you a new algorithm. I don't need to do that, so I'm just going to go ahead and just reduce this down a few times and get something a little bit lower res, say something like that. That way, if I just hit dynamic subdiv, it gives me just a nice cleaner and smoother surface that I could work with. So that is good enough for me. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And now before we go, let's try to clean this up just a smidget and get something that looks a little bit better. So here on the head, I'm going to go ahead and move this guy. So I'm going to give him a little bit longer of a neck. Move that down. And now here's where I'm going to start splitting stuff off. So I'm actually going to grab this guy, split this off, and then I'm going to split hidden, rename this the head, because my old file was, you know, it's just stuff happened. Just fine. I'm not going to cry about it much. I'm going to split that off. This will be body. For all the body that's what we got going. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to split off the hands. So we're going to go ahead and call these hands. Yep, the machine I'm currently on does have lots of RAM. And RAM will be good for you too. But again, my personal computer is still pretty low. I have randomly 48 gigs of RAM. Like, who has that? Like, what's wrong with me? There you go. That's like such a random thing. Okay, so I'm going to do this real quick. So I'm going to grab this guy. Okay, I have, for whatever reason, perfect circle going on. Let's mask that off. So now I'm going to click here. I'm going to turn on the gizmo. I'm going to move this here. Now I'm going to select this little pizza box and just grab these two objects so I can move them independently from each other. And I'm going to bring this more like that, because that's just a little misshapen. It's a little out of whack there. Now, we haven't posed the feet yet, and you might be asking, yo, Ian, why aren't you posing the feet? I'm not posing the feet yet because I don't have a place to put them, so I don't want to guess what that is. But they are separated. So now we get to see the labor of our work by coming through. We're going to hit save. Gonna hit save, and then we're gonna come in here. We're gonna go back to DynaMesh. We're gonna uncheck our groups. We don't want that checked on. We're gonna find a decent resolution, so we're gonna do a picker. So I'm gonna come through here and pick the highest resolution it will identify, which I think is gonna be about that. We can always increase it a little bit if we want to take it to a full 1,000. And then we're gonna slide and see what happens. Well, we gotta turn it on first. There we go. All right. Now we can start focusing on cleaning this up. And because of that, now if we wanted to, we can hit save next, create a new iteration before we start diving into fixing all this, so we can go back and fix a lot of that shenanigans. Okay, I'm going to pick alpha 18. It's one of my favorite alphas. Little shout out to Eric Sosa, because that's how I actually first heard about that a couple years ago. Saw him using it, and I was like, dude, that is some money right there. Been using it ever since. There we go. All right, let's fix this. So next week, what we'll end up doing is we'll make sure that we come through and we start working on some of the actual, we'll start working on some of the facial expression, getting the look and feel of him in here. But I think we're already pretty, for a couple hours, I think we're actually doing pretty good. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this process. A little bit different than what I usually stream. I usually do blockouts. But I thought, yeah, let's work from a base mesh. I've been wanting to do that more anyway, so. There we go. Kind of smooth this in. It's really important that I get this rib cage blocked out. I can always come back in and sculpt the muscles. But this rib cage, this is where we need to be. That's the driving force of your chest. So we're gonna put that back on. Come through. Rock sculpting coming, absolutely. Actually, yeah, you know what? Maybe do we have time? I have a meeting I have to get to, so we'll end up doing some environment stuff next week. But hey, real quick, speaking of environment stuff, since he's here, Mr. Rodolfo, hitting there in the chat, he's an environment artist. You're gonna want to check out his work soon because you know. You might see more of his work soon. I'm not gonna really spoil anything else. We might see more of his work soon, so check him out. Environment in ZBrush, baby. All right. Okay. Yeah, we're fixing that. Cool. And then I'm actually going to, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start pivoting this in just a little bit, get a little bit more in that area, and we'll make some more adjustments to that. There's some connection points here that we need to really establish. So we'll clean that up next week. Can we sit with a chip? Sure. Yeah, you could do it. Yeah, 100%. I believe in you. But that brings up a good point, and I would agree. Definitely try the pose. If it's a pose you're unfamiliar with or you've not tried ever, I would definitely give it a shot. But that's why actually you might be seeing me from time to time. I was like actually making movements with my body. I was really trying to understand what I could actually do with this pose, if I could even get close to this. Of course, superheroes and comics and movies and CGI and all that good stuff, we're able to like push things further than anatomically possible in humans. But here's the cool part about that sentence too, is that, you know, he's actually a mutant. So he might be a little bit more limber than the average human. So, you know, excuses. So right now, I'm just focused on getting relatively things semi-corrected. There's not enough time to really go in, but next week we'll do a lot more. but we have a lot of anatomy to correct. But this gets us as a good starting point, I think. Smooth that in there. Again, we're going to have some, because this is bent, because this area is bent here, we're actually going to see a little bit more puffing of the actual tricep. We're going to see more rounding of this backside because you can't have this super flexed with your arm bent in. You could really flex the tricep with your arm straight or semi-bent, but when it's like at a 90 degree or more, you're going to get a lot more roundness happening from this area. So you want to check that a little bit too. So always like kind of see how the body moves. And that's going to help you really establish some realism or believability in your sculpts. Let's get that in there. It's all about just kind of getting that close enough here. There we go. Okay. So we are well on our way to getting this relatively close. I'm going to turn symmetry back on because the neck is... Okay. The neck is going to be still attached to the head, and I want the head to be still symmetrical. That is a choice I'm willing to make at the moment. It's just because the final pose will have his head tilted somewhere, but I really want this to feel a little bit more natural, but at the same time, I want to be a little bit lazy and lean into the power of symmetry. I'm going to start blending some of that in just a bit. There we go. Kind of get that close enough. There we go. I don't want this to be too puffy. There we go. All right, guys. So here we are right now. What have we got? Yeah, perfect. You need to sit at a gargoyle on a skyscraper. 100%. You know, that's actually a model I've been wanting to do. There has been a time where I wanted to tackle the show Gargoyles and do a take on that. I thought that would be super fun. But then I'm like, I also just want to sculpt a gargoyle at some point. So I thought that also would be cool. All right, this is where we're going to be, okay, 3 minutes or less than. I'm going to just smooth this area out real fast. I can't go to bed with this knee looking whacked. So hold on 1 second. We need to fix this just a little bit. But we got this relatively at a spot where I'm happy with it. And we can go ahead and do some more anatomy corrections next week, as well as find his face. And I love searching for faces. I used to hate it. It used to scare me because I'd be so picky on how the face would go. But the more I practice faces, the more I realized, you know, you could start with very similar landmarks on every face, and then you just start finding the character and searching for it. So if you lead with anatomy first, with reference in front of you, I find that searching for a face is actually not as terrifying as it once was, but always easier said than done. Of course, time behind the wheel is going to be helpful. So, and you know what I want to do actually, looking at this real quick? No, we'll leave that for next time. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole, and I don't want to do that just yet. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. All right. Absolutely. Oh, thank you guys so much. All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and experiencing a lot of fun journeys as we uncovered how to block out a character from a base mesh. There's still a lot more to do, but this is something that in the toy and collectible world, this is something I did a lot. When I was doing that as a 9-to-5, is that we would move into post pretty quickly, find your characters and stuff like that. So it was always a lot of fun. And every time I make a toy or something for 3D print, I usually lean into finding the actual anatomy. So thank you for hanging out with me and enjoying the journey and asking amazing questions. And like before, just going to throw that out there again for all the funsies out there. If you're curious, ZBrush Summit is alive. It is happening. It is going to be happening in person. There will be some online experience as well. But here you go. Boom. There's the ZBrush Summit link. You can register today. More information will come on this, so don't you worry. We're going to have a lot more information soon, but I definitely wanted to lean in to the fact that it's already available for you to register for free, just like it was before. So if you're going to be in the LA area, you're going to come meet us, hang out with us, enjoy yourself. It's going to be great. So thank you again, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye, bye-bye.